ever worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream? Always so generic, more normal than your friends. Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard. Cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. Tyler, Phil, and Boris. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all in Canon.
It's Sunday. You know what that means. It's another episode of the It's Canon podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things, everything, the podcast where we talk about all things comics, all things movies, all things toys, all things Lego, all things books, all things video games, and the best part of it all is that it's all in canon. As always, we're your hosts. I'm Boris, and this week I'm joined by Phil.
Hello, hello. How is everything going?
And Tyler.
Hey, yo! Looking at numbers going up and down.
Pretty much. That's been the week.
Yep.
That's been the week. What a week it's been. All right, guys. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the stock markets because that's the type of show we are. We're going to be touching on a news item that we left out last week just because of timing, and that's the Capcom breach. We're going to be talking about Netflix and other streaming services and the numbers that they're bringing in and new streaming services. And we're going to reinforce our ideas around those. We're going to be talking about Google and big tech and delays. Movies are being delayed, surprise, surprise. And then we're going to round out the show as we talk about WandaVision and the MCU in a spoiler-free review of the latest episode. How does that sound, guys?
Definitely sounds like we got some work ahead of us.
Yep.
So much work ahead of us.
All the work. Boris, the slave driver, at it again.
Okay, it got to the point where I now have to keep a log of all the shows and all the books and all the comics that I read each week.
Well, part of it is you're an old man, so you forget.
Yeah.
The other part of it, no, honestly, I've been doing it for years, just because I got to remember somehow.
I know, and you always come to me each week. So what did you do this week? And I pick out like 2 or 3 things that are at the top of my brain. And then I realize there's like 6 way more interesting things that I did, but that just were like sitting in the closet.
Yep, I know, man. Phil, what did you do this week?
Oh, I forget now. No. Oh my God. No, I decided that with the political changing of temperatures going on in the world, I decided that I was finally brave enough to watch The Watchmen, the HBO series. So I binged that bad boy.
We were talking
over
about that
3 days. Yes. And I really enjoyed it. Like super enjoyed it. I thought, wow, what a great show that is. You know, and obviously my regular stuff. I watch The Expanse, which we never really talk about on here, but I think that is just killing it right now. A current season. And I actually subscribed to like Marvel Unlimited and finally like linked up my Comixology account. So I'm buying more books now and reading more comics, which is a good change because I've largely been dialed out of that.
We don't talk about comics on this show. You don't have to read any comics.
Never. I'm currently digging on The Vision, which I know like the comic book couples, the counseling couples, they have a show on it, and I started listening to it last night. I'm like, I have to stop now because I haven't finished the comic.
Yep. Going back to Watchmen, it's crazy when you think about the fact that show came out December, I guess fall of 2019, and seeing the shit show of a year that 2020 was, in terms of the messaging that show was trying to put out. So it's just crazy to think kind of like how perfect timing that show was
To be honest, I watched the first couple episodes, and I was way too sensitive to it just because of the climate of the world at that time. And I didn't have a lot of hope that things were going to get better. And that's why I avoided it. However, it stayed well preserved on my PVR from the days when I had HBO.
Yeah.
And it's something snapped in me this week where I was just like, like I say, things definitely appear to be more optimistic in terms of a lot of the stuff, and it's pretty heavy stuff. And I just felt I'm ready. I'm ready to dive into it. And that retrospective angle on it was absolutely mind blowing as well.
Yeah.
To think about the places that we were in the world and those themes and how on point they were.
Yeah. And it just goes to remind me, as you were talking to me about that show, offline, it was kind of just reminded me of how much more work we have overall as a society, right? Like, the work's just getting started, guys. Things are not perfect. Things are far from perfect, but, we at least have recognized, or some people have recognized that, hey, there is an issue. There's still a lot more work to do. And one of the reactions, and it's always been, like, on the forefront of my mind, is when that show was going on, the amount of people saying, and get this take, this is like one of the funniest takes I've ever heard about that show. I don't like it because you make white supremacists seem evil all the time. Why are white supremacists always evil?
Yeah, why would you do that? I want my comics to be apolitical and support white supremacy. These fucknuts.
Oh man, I don't know. It was for me more than anything. Like, the race stuff is the race stuff, and it needed to be said, and it needed to be addressed in that show. And I'm glad that they made it the big theme. I did kind of low key geek out as a person who read the original Watchmen comic and obviously watched the show, the movie that they made about it, which, love it or hate it, it was what it was.
Motherfucking Snyder.
Yeah, and I just really enjoyed some of the links, like how this was an extension of that story, how that world's evolved, modern day, the throwbacks to it, the character throwbacks, all that stuff was just really a little bit of fun, an extra level to it, if you will. And I think that you can completely enjoy that show without that level.
Yeah.
And just have the questions not really impact you. But for me, that was a nice little treat too. Yeah. It was just seeing how everything panned out.
For sure. That's one thing I really liked about that show, is the fact that you can enjoy that show. And we've talked about this with Mandalorian and any Star Wars that has come out. And that's the fact that you can enjoy it in many different ways, whether you are a true fan or a new fan. It was just, if it can captivate you and you can just jump into this world, not having watched or read anything before, and enjoy the world that they're presenting to you, they've done a great job. And that's something that I found that Watchmen did. Like, it's such a good show for them. Those 10 episodes are great. And the amount of people that I know that have watched that show that didn't even know it was a comic book or forgot about the movie, and they loved the show. But just like you said, especially someone who read the original, back when Jesus probably lent it to you because you're that old. It has that special little something else, right? And the other thing is, I love the fact that it was more true to the comic as opposed to the movie, with the major change of the two being, the giant squid attack versus atomic bombs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and, like, the funny thing is I was a latecomer to the Watchmen comic. In fact, that was a good joke. But I was late getting to that because it was so politically charged when it was on the shelves. And it was getting my eyeball at that time. But I honestly, as a younger guy, I wasn't into what it was talking about. That's all. It's not the politics. It's all politics. But I just wasn't into that. I just didn't care about atomic bombs at that point.
But Phil, Comics aren't political.
But they aren't political. Yeah. No, so I got into that later because of the movie push. Myself and a friend decided to go get the graphic novel and to read it and talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fascinating to have an intellectual conversation about that book while I was reading it as an adult. You know what I mean? And that had value for me. And it was all in just preparation for the movie at the time. And I guess the movie, and I was a little bit hot and cold on that, obviously, but
yeah,
it is what it is. It's there. It's
yep.
good if you
What
like
else?
that thing.
What else is going on? What did you do for your birthday? What else did you do over the week?
Oh, geez. Birthday was really low key because of lockdown.
Yeah.
So I didn't see anybody. I didn't do anything. I ordered myself a nice present and that lightsaber, and yeah, that was about it. Like, honestly, the other big thing that I did manage to score this week was Lego sets are finally back in stock on Lego.com. And I was able to pick up the new Mandalorian pack, which has a baby, like Grogu, Mando in the full Beskar with arm printing, and
Nice.
a sand person, all in a $40 400-piece set. So it's not like it's going to break the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And Lego also unveiled its plans for a blacksmith shop, which is going to be coming out February 1st. And hopefully that one doesn't go. I know it will, because it's the return to the medieval kind of castle Lego.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was such a big thing as a kid. And it's got nostalgia written all over it. It's just that now I'm really having to choose my sets because there's only so much display space that I have.
Yep.
And I'm down to, I can add one more modular building. So I have to choose which modular building I want. I want that police station so bad. It's not in stock yet. But I do want that one so bad because of the color scheme and whatnot. And I just think it would look great in my lineup of those sets.
Yeah, very
Which
cool.
is, I've got too much sitting in the closet, man.
Yeah, and I think your jollies were tingling when you heard that the Muppets are going to be officially going to Disney+.
Oh, yeah. Huge news for me. And I think the reaction was good.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I saw a lot of really positive online reaction to that. Now, naturally, I follow people who are into that on Twitter. So it wasn't shocking, but we've been asking for it since the inception of Disney+. And before that, Disney always hinted at it was going to release seasons 4 and 5 on DVD. We have 1, 2, and 3. And it was always told to us that it was about licensing with the parties that were involved. I don't really think it was that. I think it was the fact that they had to do a full restoration of all 5 seasons. And that was the slowdown on the work.
Yeah.
And now it's shifted to digital. Now it's shifted to streaming. So the market, Disney's already declared that they're not really pursuant to a disc-based library. They want everybody to be involved in online streaming, and that's a way to capture that audience. If you want to watch the Muppets, the old stuff, you pretty much, it's necessitated to have your streaming service there.
Yeah.
So, and that's where they found, actually, in going through all this stuff, I think there's a larger story that's not being told yet that will be. But that's when they rang up Brian Henson, and they showed him the Christmas Carol song that got cut by Disney, and they said that they lost the footage. They found it and they showed it to him before Christmas, and it will obviously be ready for next Christmas on Disney Plus. But I think that that's part of the larger story of what's been going on with the Muppet archives that Disney now control. So I think that they found that mixed in with the show.
I am so happy that they can create new Muppet material. Because I know a part of the Peanuts thing is that, you can't create new Peanut stories. So any movie, anything that's come out, it's always been based on something that's already out. Like, you cannot create a net new Charlie Brown IP.
Mm-hmm.
So, luckily we don't have that same thing with
Chris Schultz
with the Muppets.
wanted that locked down, right? Whereas Jim wants the product to live and evolve.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm finally over Vogel being Kermit right now and the voice change, I'd rather have someone predisposed to a different sounding Kermit, but still get to enjoy Kermit versus someone who just has to watch canned material.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's only so many times you can watch those 5 seasons, or there's only so many times. And Kermit changed a lot in that time anyway. You know, even when Steve picked up the puppet and started doing it, it got away from the slapsticky, crazy crap. And when we all start watching on February 19th, I think next week, Dinosaurs comes out on Disney Plus.
Yep.
All 4 seasons. And then February 19th, Muppet Show. When you watch the actual Muppet Show and you watch those old episodes, you're going to see it's so slapsticky. And monsters eat people. And shit gets blown up.
Yep.
And it feels different. And it doesn't feel wrong. You know, that's the Muppets I remember.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's the origin of it. And it became something else through the movies. It became something else through the other shows that they did.
Yeah.
And that's not bad either.
Yeah.
You know?
So, taking a step back, something that came up as we're talking, we're done with Muppets. Going back to Lego. I was talking to a friend earlier in the week, and she was saying that she was looking at some Lego sets. I believe it was a Harry Potter set or something. I don't remember what it was. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. She was saying she's not a Lego collector. She's looking to getting this because of the IP, and she's like, holy shit, Lego is expensive. Mm-hmm. So how do you kind of talk to someone about, like, that hump, and, like, you know, how do you get someone to, like, take the plunge?
It's funny. It is funny because any parent, and I'm not a parent, but any parent knows inherently how expensive Lego is. The funniest story I ever experienced was going into Toys R Us and buying one of these Black Series helmets behind me. I think it was one of the Stormtroopers. And I brought it up to the counter, and that's like $150 of plastic. Yep. And she picks it up, and I go, I know, it's like $150 box of air. And she goes, no, that's Lego. Right?
Yeah.
Because that's the joke to them, is that if you want to sell something exorbitantly expensive, like, you know, even $400 of Lego is light, right?
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that parents are used to it. New fans, and I think I know which Harry Potter property, the dots. The dots would be the Harry Potter, all the little sigils that they go by, their house sigils, and it's in a dot art fashion. And the thing is those are $150.
Yeah.
Those are not cheap at all.
Exactly.
And if you want to do the big one, you have to buy all 4.
Oh crap!
Yeah,
at $150 plus tax, right?
Yeah.
So it is dear just for dots.
Yeah,
it's not like molded pieces that look really awesome.
That's crazy.
And it's a tough buy-in, man. It's a tough buy-in, but at the same rate, you can look at it, and I know we've joked about this on our chat. It is almost like an investment opportunity as well. Because if you want to collect those things and not really get into the build, which some people do enjoy that. They just like the collecting of it and having the boxes on a shelf or in an area. And those things appreciate value when they get discontinued. I think the only Lego set that didn't appreciate super fast, the only IP was The Simpsons. Yeah. And even then, it's still crazy. It's still expensive.
Yeah.
But it just didn't it didn't accrue value as quickly as some of the other discontinued stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
I don't know. It's tough. Like, I have friends who don't collect Lego, who I get them turned on to it as an adult Lego builder. Mm-hmm. And now they're going out and they're buying $500 Harry Potter entire castles, you know, on the architecture basis, like a $500 set.
Yeah. Where do you find those? And I'm assuming these people own homes and houses and have.
Well, they're in apartments. They're wherever. I'm amazed because I used to have cats, and I dread to think of cats in and around Lego because those things would just go inhaled, and you'd be digging through cat poo to get your parts back. And I look at that and I go, I don't know how they do it, because that one friend also bought a Death Star, and that's a crazy set.
Yeah,
crazy set. I can't stand those play sets. I don't like the look of them on display. I'd rather have a set that looks good on display for presentation value.
Yeah,
That's
for
just
sure.
me.
For sure. Well, that's that. That's the week. That was Phil. Tyler, how's everything? I know you've been quiet for like 20 minutes. How's everything?
It's been 20 minutes. I am back in the work mines. So it's been a lot of comfort stuff this week. A lot of Bob's Burgers because my wife hasn't seen most of it and is now like into it. So I'm watching a lot of that. And
You can let her know that I am Gene.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we have theories about Gene being gender fluid because he's all about that side of it. And
He goes for the joke no matter what.
True.
That's
true.
That's what I see in him.
And then I dug out and dusted off Fallout 4 and modded the ever-living crud out of it.
Okay, I accept it now.
Because the Sim Settlements 2 launched in November, and I missed that. And I can't talk about what project I'm working on yet, but there is a project that I am mining this space for ideas for.
Right. Cool. Very cool. What have you...
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything new?
Well, that's the result. It's been not a ton new this past week. Yeah. We've been getting into Lupin, which is still just amazing.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so well put together. And other than that, like, it's like not much. Not much.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of computer work, a lot of like repairing stuff this week, and it's just been a nose to the grindstone week over here.
I'm going to bring something up that I found out that I know we talked about in chat.
Yeah.
And that is I found out on Stadia that 4K, just because you can do it, doesn't mean that it gets delivered to you in 4K if you have the subscription.
Yep.
Because Destiny 2 fires up in 4K all the time for me, but Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, I took a break. Yeah, I took a break from Cyberpunk like when it was like getting a lot of patches and stuff. I took a break because I was like, all right, this is going to get patched a heck of a ton, and I don't know if I have the time and bandwidth to replay through it this year. So I am with 1.1. I think I'm going back in a little bit.
Yeah. So I played a little bit on Friday night. Yeah, Friday night to Sunday. There's been a lot of changes. The game seems a little more fluid, if that makes sense to you. Like, it just seems more fluid. It seems more normal. It seems more natural. Everything moves and literally moves better. The text isn't red anymore all the time. They have different colors for whom is speaking and what they are saying, so your eyes won't burn anymore.
Fair.
The map when you're driving still sucks, but outside of that, there have been some pretty good improvements. No crashes just yet for me, but again, we are running on PS5s, so that's that.
Yeah, that helps more than a little.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And again, we're going to be talking a little more about Cyberpunk 2077 when, probably in a week or two. There's a lot to talk about, but yeah, that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that 1.1 patch had Stadia fixes too.
Yeah.
We were really shocked about that on the Stadia side.
But,
well, me and the other guy who's playing it. On Stadia.
Yeah, the two of us were like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I'm serious. Like, that's what the community feels like. It feels like you and another guy.
Speaking of Phil, I got a question for you about Stadia.
Sure.
So that because I haven't looked into this in advance. But Hitman 3 had that whole thing where you could play.
Stadia share. Yeah.
No, not what I'm asking about.
Oh, okay.
They had the Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 places could be like booted up in 3.
Yep.
How does that working for Stadia? Do you have to own 1 and 2, or are you just getting it? Or is it the cluster biff that it is over on Epic and Steam?
They headed it off because they gave us Hitman 1 and 2 for free a month ago.
Oh, so it's just that you just get them.
Yeah, now you can open up Hitman 1 and 2, like the collector's edition, and there's a spot for 3. So if you bought 3, it just appears alongside 1 and 2, and then you can just play in the sandbox.
Well, what I'm saying is if you get 3, it's already set up with those 1 and 2 are open.
Yeah,
cool.
Yep, you get access to it. Now, as far as I know, that's what the play is there. Otherwise, you have to own them, and then you get access to them. But that's the one platform I believe it's working on. The other one was that State of Share, that new feature that this game opened up. Stadia's talked about it. They finally did it for Hitman 3. It doesn't work.
No, of course it doesn't.
Because it brings you to the beginning of the level, whereas we were told you're going to be able to just jump into someone's game.
Right. Interesting.
So it's a little irritating.
Yeah.
So it literally does none of what was advertised.
It's apparently it's up to the developer.
Who made this? Up to the developer. CD Projekt Red?
Blah, 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 blah.
It still works. It's just not what Stadia did. They chose to implement it in a different way, which is their prerogative. It's up to them to leverage it.
Every time someone says it's their prerogative, I just think of Britney Spears.
Sure. Yeah, and that's how I bring the show to a complete halt. We're annoyed. Like, the community's a little bit irritated from what I can see. That the state of share or whatever, it didn't translate to our expectations. But it's better than not having anything, I guess. But there's no commitment that they're going to make it better either. Yeah. They're just like, well, this is the way it is. There's another game coming up in a month or two that looks campaign-ish. So it's going to be like a strategy game on Stadia that's going to use the feature as well. We'll see what they do.
Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Your volume. Sir. That's me saying your
volume.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Too loud.
So I've been what the fuck have I been doing? Oh yeah, so this week I haven't watched too much. A lot of random stuff. I haven't really been in the mood to pick up anything new. So I've been watching a lot of Forensic Files and shit like that, things that I always watch. So watch out if I ever get pissed off at you. But there were 2 movies I watched this week. One of them was okay. One of them was horrible. The one that was okay was Death of Me. It's on Netflix. It has Luke Hemsworth and Maggie Q. Not bad. It's kind of weird. It's one of those mystery, not even whodunits. What the fuck did they do? So that's that. And then the other one that I watched was that Outside the Wire.
Oh, it's such a bad movie.
It's horrible.
No, my favorite part is how obvious when you get to that finale and you get to the twist. How the writer and director were like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing that has ever been come up with. No one will ever see this coming." And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But also Anthony Mackie has got to have some student debt because he'll do anything.
Yeah, he's literally in so much. He was in that Miss Baja movie that I was talking about last week with the chick from Jane the Virgin. Like, he's in so much right now. He's he's the Black Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, Netflix has got to have some compromat on him because he'll do whatever.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So that's pretty much what I've watched. I've also rewatched Silence of the Lambs this week, just because I'm really kind of excited for that Clarice show.
I don't know, man.
Not down with the cannibal?
No, that's not the problem at all. The problem is that that particular IP has gotten to such a weird place.
Yeah.
Because after Silence of the Lambs, it became this whole thing of trying to justify Hannibal.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've read the books, Phil, but the books get real freaking weird about it.
Yeah.
And then you watch Brian Fuller's take, which is it's so over the top, and I don't know, man.
I like being able to turn the lights off in my house at night, so I typically do that kind of stuff.
Mads Mikkelsen remains a delight, though.
Yes.
I think he's signed on for doing Thrawn.
I hope so.
He'd be an interesting Thrawn.
He's the voice of Thrawn. One of the Mikkelsens.
Yeah,
the voice in
Mads. Yeah.
It's him. Yep. But that's the rumor.
All right.
But it kind of came out that he signed. So.
All right, guys. It's time to start taking stock in the news, and we're going to kick things off talking about stock markets. So before we talk about this, let me say that we are no way telling you to buy, to sell, to do anything. Anything that you do with our information, you do on your own. You cannot. It's not our fault if something goes a bust. It's not our fault if something goes good. We're giving you some news that we've been talking about.
Legally, we also have to disclose if we own any stocks in anything we're talking about. So I liquidated a bunch of my holdings last week. So anything, I don't think I hold anything we're talking about now.
Yeah, that was literally my next point. So thanks, Tyler, for saying that, because it's important. Phil,
No, I know.
Especially like my situation, right? And again, like this is for me such an interesting piece of tech news that I would feel dumb not to talk about it. So stock markets, we're seeing insane changes right now in the stock markets. Activision and Blizzard, it's just hit a 37-year high.
That's a bunch of stuff's hitting record highs. It's insane.
Yep. So it hit and exceeded more than $95 a share, which is crazy for that company. We also saw GameStop. The company that everyone thought was going to go bust in 2020.
And still might.
It still might.
Yeah.
It still might. But right now, they are killing it. So right now, they're sitting at a 51% increase, and they are at $65 American.
Yeah.
Tyler, we were talking about this on our chat. What's your take on all this?
So, GameStop is an interesting case because it really seems to be based upon market exuberance around the new CEO, whose name escapes me at this exact moment, but he is like a bit of a wunderkind. Like he's got a couple of like major successes under his belt, and he's kind of announced some initial thoughts on how he wants GameSpot to grow and rework itself, and it looks good. That being said, like GameSpot's not out of the woods yet.
No.
Like they're still very much at risk for bankruptcy.
Yeah. So
they have a lot of locations.
The CEO is George Sherman, and he was also had senior roles at Advanced Auto Parts, Best Buy, Target, and Home Depot. Yeah.
Yeah. And they definitely were shuffling around the C-suite. And it really seems like they're trying to set themselves up for success, but I mean, it's become the perennial thing, whether you're Kramer or whoever, to talk about Wall Street bets, and Wall Street bets, which is a Reddit community about people who are just insane with their investing. It's a darling of Wall Street bets, and all this week you've been able to see the gain porn, which is when you've made a lot of money, and people who are like reporting $20,000 to $3 million returns from this week on their GameSpot. So
that's crazy. That is just fucking crazy.
Well,
but good on them.
There was a thing I saw where somebody was talking about the fact that there was an article that was out, and I know articles do this.
Yeah.
But if you would have taken the money from years ago that you would have spent on a Tesla Model S.
Yeah.
And if you would have bought stock with it.
Oh yeah, you made so much money. Yeah.
How much would you have? And like the one guess was, well, probably 4 Model S's, right? Like that.
No, it's like.
And it was something like
7,000.
No, it was in the millions. Like the actual amount of money was something like $10 million.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, if we want to get deep into the weeds on that, Tesla is another darling stock that.
Yep. That's why I bring it
is entirely based on future value. Yeah. I mean, interestingly enough, I have a House of Representatives transaction report open on my left screen, and it's for one Nancy Pelosi, who just bought 25 calls for Tesla yesterday, or just at the end of December. So,
yeah, and like It's crazy when you look at that. Like, I think the last statistic that I saw on it was that the current valuation of Tesla stock, it would take them 1,500 years to proportionately make product to measure their worth on the stock market.
Yeah,
it's
all
crazy.
It's all future valuation based upon things people think Musk can do, combined with market exuberance. And it's what capitalism says. It's worth what people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I think GameStop is into that category right now, like on a far lesser scale.
Yeah, they're all betting on exuberance and good feelings.
It blows me away because I look at the price of stock.
Yeah.
And I go, well, I could take a chance on GameStop if I see it dip to, let's say, $50 US, and I think that it might rocket still to be 75 or whatever. There's a good return in there. But when I look at Tesla or Bitcoin or something, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I can afford a fraction of a stock for that.
Yeah. I mean, GameStop's a really weird one right now because I think they're the highest they've ever been. I'm looking at it and it looks like, the data going back to 2002, this is the highest the stock has ever been.
Jeez.
Because it's currently at $65.01 at time of recording, and the previous high was in 2007 at $62.11.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because the world was a much different video game place in 2007 than it is now.
Yep.
Like, everybody had to go to that store or a store to buy a game.
But, I think that not only is there, like, a lot of traction because of the CEO, but I think it's also some of the ideas that have been kind of rumored swirling around what GameStop is wanting to possibly do, from the whole build your own PC to the having a digital store and stuff like that. And like, I think that...
And also video games, the industry right now, have people excited and looking to invest and possibly capitalize on that investment through it. Because if you look at anything like we've been talking about for the past year, is that video games are bigger than Hollywood. Video games, and people are seeing it and experiencing it now. I think a lot of people throughout the quarantine and pandemic have picked up a controller or tried to access maybe something they have for their kids and found out that they like it. Right? And now you're talking about those people with cash or capital investments to make going, well, what should I get in on? Hey, there's opportunity here. I like what I see. Exactly like you say. Build your own PC, digital storefront. And marriage with Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
Let's get next-gen consoles out there on a subscription level.
Yeah.
Financing to make things affordable. Like, there's some endeavors that they're doing that are just outside the box.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, that one's actually like an old-timey option in a good way, right? Because you used to get stuff on layaway or stuff like that, and why not?
Yep. It's just great. I think there's a lot of good ideas and a lot of investment opportunities. And if you guys I don't know, I gotta say, I don't even know what's in my portfolio right now. So I trying to be careful. I don't know. Maybe I have that stock in there. I don't know. My manager knows.
Ignorance is bliss, Phil. Ignorance is bliss.
It is.
All right, so
I just look at the number.
Exactly. So that's stock markets. Yeah, it's an interesting time for sure. And it's for sure something that we're going to be following over the next few weeks and months here on this show. So something that we ran out of time discussing last week, and I wanted to bring up this week, and that is the Capcom breach. So in November of 2020, we kind of talked about this as a side point, and that's the fact that Capcom was breached. Data was breached. Personal data of up to 390,000 people were exposed to this this hacker group. So the numbers actually increased by 40,000 people. And the reason why we're bringing this up is because, I think it's kind of more of a PSA more than anything else. It's we live in a world where this stuff is just going to happen, right? People are doing nefarious things with computers. Like, this is just the world that we live in now, unfortunately. And I talk to people, and they kind of They have so many accounts for so many things. Number one, they don't even know what they have accounts for.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's crazy to think that they're, like, for me, it's unheard of, but I know that people might have signed up for something, 5 years ago and forgot.
Yeah.
And they don't even know what information they put into that account, right? So,
Yep.
This is the PSA that I'm going here is we live in a digital world. Your life is completely digital. To sign up to certain things, you have to put certain information of yourself, whether it be legit or fake. That's up to you. But there's, you have an online presence with your accounts, and it's just to make sure that you know what info you're putting where and where you have your accounts. Because in a breach like this, it as minor as it is, if someone takes your password and your email, they can get into a lot of things that you might not even know you have.
Not that we're encouraging fraud, and it's important to remember that lying to certain groups and companies online or institutions constitutes fraud.
Yes.
Just double check that. We're not telling you to lie to companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's also worth remembering just kind of the couple of tools that do exist for people, especially people that are a little bit less technologically savvy. Setting up a robust password manager can help out, at least keep track of what you have and makes changing passwords easier. And then there's Have I Been Pwned, PWNED, which helps you check to see if your information's been leaked in any of the things.
Yep, all handy. And you know what? Even yesterday, I was playing around with my one of my accounts through Google, and it's obviously I've enabled it to remember some passwords for some sites, and it's telling me it's like, well, you use the same password on these 4 things, so you go in, you have to review your security credentials and go, oh crap, and then you go, I don't use that anymore. Forget about it. Get that out of there. So it's just like, okay, 30 of these things are pertinent. 30 of them don't have different passwords and do different things. But these 4 are a problem, and I don't even remember signing up for those 4. So get them out of here.
Yeah. Yep. Other good things that you can do is obviously having like an app, like a password manager type thing, for the reasons that Phil just said. And the other one is if you are feeling a little more gutsy with your tech, having two-way authentication is also really good.
Yep.
Where
two-factor authentication.
Type your password, and then you get the second password that has to match on, chances are, your mobile device.
Yep.
It's great.
And depending how you set it up, it may also require like your fingerprint if your phone has compatibility with that, which actually makes it like 2.5 factor because you need to like unlock the phone to get in.
Yep, and then it will prompt you separately to put your password or put your thumbprint or whatever fingerprint. As well, something if people are looking for it, go out and treat yourself to LastPass.
Yeah,
I
use LastPass.
Yeah, that's I think the predominant one. I know that they put on regular advertising blitzes.
Norton has, if you get into the Norton ecosystem, they have an internal one.
Right.
Which is tied in, like they have like a whole, you can buy into their ecosystem for relatively affordable right now. They're not sponsoring us, but it'd be nice if they did, because they have like a VPN and password thing and a virus thing, and it goes across, I think their base is like 5 devices, so like...
Yep. I am
looks
in
pretty
that
robust
ecosystem now. When I got my new computer, I got a year subscription. I'm like, I've been using it. I'm like, I'm down with this. I used to be all AVG. But the issue that I found with AVG is that it would have memory leaks on certain versions.
Oh, that resource hog,
Yeah, so, and I haven't seen that. And yes, this is a much newer, better, robust computer, but I'm just finding that the Norton world is better. So, obviously, we're just saying, take care of yourself. Know where you're putting your information. Have an idea of where you're signing up. And Yeah, just be careful. Watch your stuff. Check your credit report. Oftentimes, when you sign up for online banking, oftentimes banks give you the option for a quick view of your credit report. Here in Canada, I know that CIBC has a program. They use TransUnion. Scotia uses Equifax. The beauty of that of either or is that it updates once a month, and you can actually see a summary of your requests and your actual report. So it's not the official report, but it's a nice little quick glimpse into what's happening with your credit rating. Because the last thing you want is to deal with that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. And one of the accounts that a lot of people forget about is Netflix. We've talked about this before. And Netflix has done a cleanup of their accounts, but it's an ongoing thing. But Netflix reported in the last quarter of 2020, it made $6.6 billion in revenue, and they now have more than 200 million subscribers worldwide.
Yep.
And what's their debt?
Well, I mean,
Overrated.
Their debt versus their servicing ratio becomes the question, right?
Yep. I could almost guarantee you, I think their debt's somewhere in the exorbitantly crazy amount. So I'm just gonna say they've been making money for a while, but they've owed a lot of money because they keep on having to spend billions of dollars to get IP to sell nostalgia back to us. That's their whole business model, which is why Disney are gonna win in like three years with their business model, because they're not paying themselves for their nostalgia. They're just floating it right out there. The Simpsons right into your front door. So that money just goes into the slosh bucket called profit.
Well, here's the thing touching on that, Phil. Yeah, I think Disney has the advantage because of the amount of IP and properties that Disney owns under its umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
But we're seeing this thing. Discovery Plus was launched in the States a couple weeks ago. This includes shows from Discovery, Travel Channel, TLC, etc. We're getting Paramount Plus, which is an extension of CBS All Access. So everyone, again, I know that we talk about this all the time, but everyone and their mother is going this route. So Netflix is at this point, this is why they're investing so much in their own properties, or buying things up as they can. Whether it's good or not, that's a whole separate conversation, because earlier this week, I don't even know if it was one of you two, but someone was telling me that it seems like Netflix is just giving everyone and their mother a deal to put their content up there.
Well, we actually need to roll back a little bit, because Phil's data is old. Netflix has had relatively flat debt since late 2019, and since that point, their debt to equity ratio has been plummeting. It capped in June 2019 at a ratio at 2.06, so they had roughly $2 in debt for every dollar of equity, and they're down to 1.43.
Good.
Damn, that's pretty good, actually.
I just find it laughable, and I think this is where Boris was going with his comment. I find it laughable that I get Netflix alerts on my phone that say, this month, 70 new shows are premiering. And I just raise my hands and I go, and fucking none of them are worth watching. Or you're going to cancel it if I like it. I'm just jaded about Netflix.
Yeah.
This is a major problem.
Oh, for
There's
sure.
stuff that is good, they cancel.
Yeah, I just want to, because I'm now nerding out the numbers, to compare that to Disney, which you gotta remember, Disney is an established company, so long established companies tend to have a lot better debt to equity ratios.
Yeah.
Disney, in September 2019, had a debt to equity ratio of 0.4, so 40 cents of debt for everything of equity. Yeah. They're now up to 60 cents. And over the course of 2020, they took out a ton of debt. And you've actually looked back to since March 2019, they have more than doubled their carrying debt. They've actually almost tripled it.
Yeah, because they launched a streaming service.
It's also
content. They had to they haven't released a movie.
but also Disney Cruise Lines.
Yeah, Disney Cruise Lines, Disney parks.
Yep.
Those are all huge revenue boosts.
And now they're huge
anchor.
Like the reason they need to be funded through debt.
Yeah.
Like their debt ratio's up.
Yeah, and you have to finance those movies as well that you have in the can. You still have to pay for them, even though they're not making you any money.
Oh, I don't know how many of those get financed with debt though, because you get production companies on board and a lot of investors. You know, a movie finance is always weird.
It really is.
So whenever possible, you don't do debt for movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and video games are going that direction now too, right? Like, if you look at the amount of studios one video game has, and I'm using studios very light, you know, or backers, I should say. Like, you know, it makes me laugh every time I see the WB logo when I load up Cyberpunk, right? Like, it's going that direction as well. But one interesting thing about Disney, though, going back to, you know, where they're doing really well versus where they're hurting because of where the world is, you know, Disney's already thinking about the future, and what really pissed off a lot of people in California is that the Disney parks in California, so Disneyland, announced that they are canceling their season pass. So, you know, when those parks open up, they are hoping that anyone who comes is going to pay that full fucking amount. So for the foreseeable future, there won't be like a seasons or a yearly pass per se. The other thing,
at the same rate, people got to be pissed off if they bought one in pandemic. They can't go to it.
Yeah.
So it's money out of their pocket where they're just mad at Disney now because Disney couldn't predict the pandemic.
I should check because people in my family have those passes. I should check with them and see what they did, because we're making a bold assumption there, Phil. We don't know if there was something like, you know, for like our TFC money, right? Like, there could have been a deal.
There's got to be some compensation that's happening, or they're suspending them right now because they don't want people fucking buying them and then getting mad at them.
Yeah.
They don't have a product to give you.
Exactly.
So therefore, there is no seasons pass. There will be maybe a seasons pass when we have a product or when we have a safe environment. It might be that they're doing the responsible thing here. Might be.
Crazy.
But I think that they do like money. So I'm not going to argue totally
and,
on their behalf.
One way that they can for sure make money is having a contract with the government and having Disney Parks as a mass vaccination site, you know?
I thought that's where you were going with it. So
yeah, that's where I was going with it.
Yeah, seasons pass. I get the vaccine ahead of you.
Yeah. You seem like you're thinking, Tyler.
Oh, I was literally just talking with a doctor 2 nights ago about vaccine rollouts, and I was literally thinking, like, I don't think Disney has the capacity to do that. But that was me. Be at a vaccine center.
They're doing it though. They're opening, I think, this week as a vaccination center. They've converted their California park, and I think they're doing the Florida one too, just so people, because it's easy access to get there.
Yeah. And
even if it's just in the parking lot, so people would drive through and get shot in the arm and go. Like, there's some land there that they can use, and there's infrastructure to get into it and out.
There's infrastructure of, you know, that quick in and out, and that's what I think that they really want with these vaccine centers. Anyways, that's neither near nor there.
It's literally just their parking lot. And so they've cleared out the. Okay, yeah. I was wondering how they're going to do this.
Hop on a ride, get a vaccine.
I was thinking they're really going to do it in the park, and it's just like, no, we have all of our food freezers are already ultra cold because of how much we have going through. They just cleared them out already, and then basically what it is they sit there and get done out, and that's just doing in the parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. The parking lot is huge open space. Like the other places where I know that the American government and Canadian government should really think about, because anyways, we're not going there, is parking lots of these huge ass stadiums, right? Like it's these stadiums that hold an abundance.
Only if you have the freezer space.
Well, that's why most stadiums do.
So in Canada, we're looking like that's not going to be a problem. In part because we have way more vaccines than we need already on order, even with the Pfizer slowdown.
Let's not forget that there used to be a Pfizer plant in Quebec, and the previous federal government got rid of it.
Dope.
Just saying.
Oh yeah, no, you're not wrong. But
Hindsight is 2020. Anyways,
we'd still have to order them from the company if we're doing it privately.
Yep.
No, I think that the logistical issues are. My understanding is the main problem in Canada is going to be the fact that we're just a logistics problem, and it's going to be people capable of administering is going to be one of the biggest choke points in a lot of places.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's why there's like a call for getting even vets. Like if you take a piss around the corner from anything medical, you're going to be trained to get or give a vaccination.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the hardest thing to train.
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah. Just takes training.
Yep.
Yeah.
But so getting back to like our topic about Netflix and Disney and all that, I'm just saying, like, out of all the stuff that I've seen, Disney, because of their new adoption of this plan towards Disney Plus, and we saw this confirmed with that investors call, they're going to be getting into a very advantageous position with the service. They figure like they obviously aren't at half the capacity of Netflix right now, right? So they have 70 million users. Netflix has 200 plus. So it's just a matter of them ramping up. And in 1 year, they've far exceeded where they thought they would be in terms of viewership.
That was their 3-year plan.
That was their 3-year plan that obliterated in the first year.
Now, the other thing is going back to another point that you brought up, Phil. IP. Look at the fucking Netflix IP. And it's, out of every couple hundred things that gets released on Netflix, you have one or two golden things, right? Where we take a look at Disney, they're so meticulous in what's being released, right? Mandalorian,
1.6 million viewers.
Yep.
1.8 million viewers.
Exactly.
My counter to that is, what do you think Witcher's viewers were?
I know that one.
Witcher's high.
Yeah.
Witcher's in the top 5 for Netflix.
No, it's not.
No?
No, it's not. It's top 10 with top 10. It's number 7 with 76 million views.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not shocking.
Yep.
Hey, Netflix are doing a lot of things right.
Yeah.
But I hate them for the fact that when they get it wrong, which is most of the time, it ends up hurting me. Because shows that I like get canceled in the first season.
So my counter to that is going to be that any company, it follows not Poe, it follows Pareto's Law, right? 80% of anything that anybody puts out is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And
no, I'm not upset that it happens as much as it just seems to happen to stuff that I like.
Sure.
I maybe have weird taste. I can accept that.
Yeah.
But there are things that they do, and I see the crap continue. You know what I mean? Like, there are things that eke through, like The Witcher, or something that maybe I'll like, and I'm happy that it gets a second or a third season even. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff that seems to get long runs that I'm not really into. Hey, I liked Ozark. Like, there are things that are pop culture-ish.
What's the stuff you like on Netflix that gets killed?
Oh, Dark Crystal.
Well, that's
my newest open wound.
Like, what are the numbers on that versus the cost?
Oh, it totally makes sense to me. But we're not in a logical world when you're arguing about passion projects, right? So,
yeah,
I can concede the fact that it wasn't hard to predict that it was coming, but they shouldn't have gone as hard as they did if they didn't think it was sustainable. That's on production.
Well,
and we've also talked about the Netflix contracts, about how shows are doomed to fail by the structure of the actual contract. I know that we want to do a special on that, but it is a thing that we have seen and know that the fundamental structure of these contracts are to implode a show.
No, Not really. They're arguably better than a lot of historical contracts because you often get at least 2 seasons to see if you can get your viewership base versus half of one. Like, I think we're comparing unlike things right now a little bit, which is the problem. Because, like, let's look at the difference between a Netflix contract versus, like, let's go with the nerds' favorite one to talk about, which is Firefly.
Ugh.
Which Joss Whedon, like for whether or not we like Firefly, Joss Whedon had demonstrated he could make money.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave him a bigger budget show, and then, like, didn't bother airing it in order. Didn't really bother marketing it, and then, like, it just was DOA as a result. And it became this cult classic after the fact, but Joss Whedon had no recourse.
No.
Versus now, you know, you get some guarantees from Netflix. You're like, all right, you're getting a season or two, and you shoot your shot. And I think that, for example, with Dark Crystal, they went whole hog. And I think that was the right call. It just didn't find the audience.
Yep.
Well,
and
people were too busy watching Tiger King at that time, right? Like, it's
there's
the unfortunate thing.
That's on my shit that pisses me off thing.
I think it's partly that, and I think it's partly like it didn't. I think there's a lot of reasons it didn't find its audience. I think that a lot of people who could have been its audience weren't already on Netflix and weren't going to join Netflix for that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Versus, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I think if they were to do the exact same show, let's say somehow we're able to just port it over to an alternate reality and it was on Disney Plus, I think we would have gotten twice the viewership. And if you didn't change any of the marketing, just because that's what people already were.
Here's one thing that can hurt a lot of shows like Dark Crystal, and that's family sharing. One person has 4 accounts. I think the max on Netflix is 5 accounts. You know, how does Netflix take in metrics? Is it by account or is it by, profile? Because if it's by account, then everything, it just counts as one, no matter how many fucking times someone watches. Like, I have questions in regards to how they gather their metrics.
So they're from what they've reported, and it's always been a little bit of a black box, and it seems like every single one of these big new media companies is going to do it. But everything Netflix has released suggests that they do it based on viewing minutes.
Yeah.
So watching it multiple times on one account counts as multiple watches.
Okay.
And I think that's actually part of why The Witcher is so high, is because you have a subset that is watching it 3-4 times.
Yeah. Yep.
And it gives it extra views. And I wonder why, like that. Yeah, it becomes tricky to compare it to something like Disney, where we don't know if Disney's using that metric or not. I mean, my biggest willingness to compare Netflix and Disney numbers right now is on the shows we're comparing it. A lot of the time, Netflix is blowing Disney out of the fucking water.
Yeah, and also remember that Disney isn't launched worldwide just yet.
That too. No, 100%.
In South Asia, they're not anywhere near around there, and that's a huge market that they're missing out on. And that's why they're launching Star later this year, and why Disney Plus is going to be rebranded here in Canada, right? Like, so we'll see where this takes us, and hopefully we can get a better look at and glimpse as to kind of how they gather their metrics, because this is something I kind of want to take a look at, because for me it's super interesting, because I feel like we're making a comparison on things that can't be comparable just yet.
Well, I don't know if I go that far. I mean, when Disney openly reports that Mandalorian finale got 1.1 million views and Netflix is like, Witcher got 70. Like, that's a big difference. And there is something to say of Disney. Both of them are publicly traded companies, so it's one thing if they don't tell us anything. If they just go, numbers are good, we're happy, that's vague enough they can't get in trouble. But it's worth remembering that, like, if they say numbers are 70 million and they're actually 20, that's fraud, because people are making investment decisions based on that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Well, wasn't there that Hillary Swank show? The space one? It got canceled off of Netflix in the middle of the season airing.
No, it was way after. I know which one you're talking about.
Well, it wasn't way after. It was a week or two after the show came on.
But that's way after for streaming world. The world we live in now, Phil. It's now or never. You know, it's
yeah. It just took them a year and a half to decide on Dark Crystal.
Well.
Well, they were trying to make it make money.
They were trying to make it work. Yes, I know.
They
wanted to do it.
Snowpiercer has been renewed for a third season, and season 2 starts tomorrow. So calm the fuck down there, Phil. Calm the fuck down. Having said that, it's not a Netflix show, so it's TNT.
Someone else.
It's just the Canadian rights are through Netflix. Like your favorite show, Riverdale.
Yeah, Riverdale season 5 drops. I know.
Are you talking about Away?
Yeah, Away.
Yeah, Away. That was it. You know, man. It's so funny. I don't know. I just have this love-hate relationship with Netflix. When it's good, it's good.
It was a month and a half later.
Yeah, there we go.
That the cancellation happened, and those numbers and reviews were atrocious.
People liked it.
Yeah, that's the problem. People liked it. I guess they didn't like it enough because they didn't watch it. But
yeah, like again, I really dislike when people do that. They're like, "Well, people liked it," and I'm like, "I don't know, man. It's got a 60. Yeah, it's got a 60% from the audience on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 58 from the critics. That's pretty close."
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I watched like 2 episodes. I thought it had promise, but I didn't go back and watch the rest of it. And then by the time I felt like, I know, but that was on the show. It couldn't keep me. So I'm like, I'm not.
Do you hear yourself, Phil?
Much... No, I know. There's just so much competition, right? You only have so much TV time.
You're right.
And then you go back to the show. All right, a month later, you go back to the show to watch it and finish it up, and it's already canceled. So I'm like, well, why the hell am I going to watch it now? Like,
when did the show come out?
I was late to get to the party, and then I was, I got distracted. I went back to it, and it's already being told that there's no season 2. So why am I going to watch season 1? Why am I going to finish it? I'm sorry. I'm not going to dedicate 3 days of not working my full-time job just so I can say I watched Hilary Swank in space.
The other side of it being, though, that cancellation doesn't mean cancellation anymore.
Wow.
Right? Think about the number of shows that have come back from cancellation at this point.
Saved by the Bell was also renewed for a second season at Peacock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I fully understand what you mean, Phil. When did this show come out?
Yeah, it's just context. It came out
September 4th.
Yeah.
You see, this is why. And I had a feeling that that's what it was. Remember when we had a couple weeks where things were starting to open up again here in Canada, here in the GTA.
Mm-hmm.
No one was fucking streaming anything because everyone was out on the streets getting pissed drunk.
Wrong.
Yep.
You're very wrong. Netflix numbers were still up even when lockdown started getting eased.
But I'm talking about my personal experience and my circle's personal experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
people were doing stuff. They were. Guess what? I wasn't in front of my computer on a weekend for the entire day. I could go out.
but a lot of people still were.
For 4 hours, I got to go out, and then I came home.
Yeah, a lot of people still were. Tyler's right.
I'm sorry, guys, but the data was like more people are watching streaming, more people are binging still than did before pandemic, even places with no lockdowns.
Well, just remember how we started this, where we reported that Netflix gained in that last
That's what I'm saying.
2020. I know.
Right? Netflix was gaining. Like, they're doing real good, so I don't know.
Just taking a look.
What? Premiered September 4th, canceled October 19th.
There you go.
I mean, I'm guessing it was in the shitter then. If it canceled that fast, for how much it probably cost to make.
Yep. I just saw a lot of online reaction to it too, and I know that I'd watched some of it. It wasn't necessarily my show, but I saw people reacting, going, "What the hell?"
But
they were upset.
I
don't know if they watched it all, if they really loved it, if they didn't. It wasn't a deep analytic dive. It was an observation.
Timeline of Q4 2020 is a little skewed right now, but around that time that they announced Away was being canceled, I believe was also the time, and you guys can keep me honest here, where Netflix went on a spree of just axing a shit ton of shows. Like
it was about there.
Like, God knows what else was axed. And then the big running joke was, after canceling all these shows, they announced, hey, we're making an Assassin's Creed show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they have that. They have a Cyberpunk show. I think a lot of those other shows, Netflix is like, what if we didn't pay for like any of the development, and it's just a marketing thing now?
Yeah,
exactly.
And, yeah. And we talked a little bit about like what those numbers are for people, for example, watching Last of Us on YouTube instead of playing it. And it's like I found a single video with 39 million views.
Crazy.
It's like, sure. Why not?
Yep. Yeah.
I don't know, it's a weird world.
It is a real world. The streaming world is really weird, and again, we're gonna be following this, it is what it is. All right, so we're gonna move on, and we're gonna be talking about big tech. And one of the things that a lot of people have been talking about over the past few weeks is the power of big tech. A lot of, whether you agree with this view or not, I'm just bringing this up, and that is big tech getting too much power in the world? A good example of this is, the bannings, and as justified as they were, there is a question to be asked on, is big tech too powerful for itself? And I think another example of this is earlier this week, Google has threatened to pull its entire search engine from Australia. And this happened on Friday, where they threatened to make a search engine unavailable in Australia if the government went ahead with plans to make tech giants pay for news content.
Yeah, and to be specific on that, the Australian government is asking for payments on just listing a link, which is what Google's outrage is about. Just actually having a link to a news article, they want Google to pay.
Yeah, Canada...
It's only cents. It's only pennies or something like that. It's a small amount.
It's fractions of a cent, I think, for per impression, but it adds up. Yeah, Canada has discussed a similar law. And I think it ended up being pretty dead in arrival. Like, I think they were like, what if we did this? And I think that they talked to a couple of tech people, and they were like, well, here's what that means. And they were like, cool, not that then.
So that was DOA, because that was when they were discussing the whole tax reform. That was part of it. That was part of the original bill.
Yeah, Australia are digging in. Like, the PM is like, you've got money, pay it.
Well, isn't the Australian Prime Minister a bit of a dickhead?
Yeah. So,
I think that it's interesting that Google made this threat, right? Like imagine just stopping to Australia.
Well, there's two sides to that, right? Of like, one part of it is you can get around it, and two, I think it's a lot of posturing and threats, right? And we get back to this reality of, if you talk about big tech, so we're talking about like any major international company, and even really big anything, right? Even Walmart. If the United States doesn't want to enforce a rule on them, and the EU doesn't, and China doesn't, no one else has really enough sway to force a company to do anything anymore for a lot of these companies.
Yeah.
Right?
It's interesting in the sense that it's the discovery that a lot of these services are pretty much essential services. And you're right. Like, people get it confused with they think it's a right. That's what we saw with Twitter and the bannings that went on there, because they're like, well, my free speech is being curtailed, which we've discussed isn't. It's a private company and things like that. So I understand it. It's just people's feelings about these companies. The same thing about Google. And you're right. 3 big superpowers, like 3 large countries, do have the ability to get them to change potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And these other countries can't, but it doesn't help people who feel, and I'm being devil's advocate here because it isn't necessarily my belief. Like,
sure.
There's a lot of stuff on the show. I'm saying stuff to provoke.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, people they don't see it as a national thing. They see it as a service, right? And they go,
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, I want to be able to Google my porn or whatever it is, right?
Sure.
I want to be able to Google my news. And you're telling me that because my government has decided that it wants to do that, I have to go use DuckDuckGo. Like,
Yeah.
it's just weird. It's just, I could see their point. I'm like, yeah, and these companies are absolutely, look at what Microsoft did this week. They changed the entire structure planning of Xbox Live Gold. People freaked out in one day. Next day, apology. We're fixing it. Sorry.
Yeah,
we made a mistake.
Sure. You need to have enough of a customer base that is legitimately energized enough to do anything. And with the bigger the company is and the more indirect their money making is, the harder it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So with Google, like, where does Google get their money? And it's from selling data about you and selling advertisement, like selling your eyeballs. So, as much as you're like, well, I'm not going to use Google, all those reports have come out of like, doesn't matter if your friend does, we know about you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, try to explain it to an 82-year-old man.
God, I can, yeah.
I had to go through his Facebook stuff. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I had a customer in the store who used to work in tech, not understand how Facebook and Google work. It was insane.
Oh, you'd be shocked how often that happens.
Oh, it's bananas. But
yeah, it's a weird spot in the world. I think people are waking up to it and they're acting legitimately shocked, and yet it all happened under their watch as far as political stuff goes on. You know what I mean? As Boris points out and whatnot about, even a Pfizer factory based in Canada happened under a watch of government. You know what I mean? Like, it's just hilarious because for years, the governments, and not any specific government, has enabled these superpowers to be created in the tech industry. And now they're like, oh my gosh, it's Frankenstein.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, I mean, we all, and I use we very broadly here, of like, a lot of people bought in to the libertarian promise of the internet in the 90s of like, just let it be chaos and it's going to be fine. And it was like, geez, that may have been a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're at a point where, we're past the point of no return, in my opinion. You can't introduce new bills that would curtail those powers now. Like, you can, but it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna be a lot more work to get those things passed.
Oh yeah, it's the iceberg problem that I've mentioned before. The closer you are to the iceberg, the more you gotta turn the ship. Because you can make progress. I mean, the EU introduced the right to be forgotten, and the EU was like, Google, you're gonna play ball, and Google was like, yeah, we are for the EU.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or is it GMDR? Whatever the European you have to get harder to track people rule.
Yeah,
but again, it's got to be like a big government.
It's interesting though, in the sense that I think someone got sued this week on the EU. Oh, Valve got hit with a penalty in the EU for geo blocking.
Yep.
Right? Because the EU says you're not allowed to geo-block because the EU is all one entity and you're treating it as countries. It's fascinating to me, and that's part of the what you're talking about, Tyler.
Yep.
Is like you can do one thing to the world and have one little segment of it go, no, you can't. That's against the rules. It's such a tangled thing. Like what Boris is saying. It's so big now, even if you slap on limitations, there's going to be growth points that come out of other areas around those limitations to make it mutate even more. It's like dealing with coronavirus or something. It's like every time you think you got it, it changes.
And that's the reason why in the States, especially, we're starting to finally get pushed towards antitrust work. Because, calling a spade, China has demonstrated all but no interest in doing trust busting unless it runs contrary to the interests of the party.
Yep.
And the EU has tried, but for what Amazon, Google, Facebook, Twitter are all in the States. So, if the EU says we're going to trust bust you, and they go like, all right, then we'll just spin off the European functions. Like it, the unfortunate reality is, is that like the United States has become like the de facto decider in a bunch of international commercial questions, such as when do you break up, when do you charge companies with antitrust violations? And like it's happened in our lifetime. That was Microsoft in the 90s. Of the American government came in and it was like, you're too big, chop chop chop.
Yep.
And that is probably the easiest way to cut the Gordian knot. Whether or not it's the right thing to do, but it's probably the easiest solution.
And then you look at the new administration in the States, they're putting a finance person in that's anti-Bitcoin, that kind of thing. So now, but I'm just saying that now it's becoming, I know, it's really complicated. And I can't even, I'm just putting it there in the sense that they're starting to notice things. Right, these anonymous things that the internet's kind of gotten away with before.
Starting to notice or finally caring to do anything.
Crypto? Yeah, bad things happen with crypto. What do you mean? Like,
well, I mean, or the other side of it, which is they finally have one party that controls all of the government, and it's not just a shit show that nothing gets done.
Yeah,
because whether or not you care about any particular political issue, very little actually got done in the States over the last 4 years. That wasn't just executive orders.
Yeah. Filibustering. Favorite word.
Yeah. It's one of those new words in a lot of people's vocabulary. So.
If you're American, you should know what filibuster means.
God, goodness knows we use it up here a lot.
Should. Should. A failure to know what a filibuster is, if you're an American citizen, is a failure of your education system. Because it's been an integral part of your entire civic structure for 300 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting to kind of see like these types of stories kind of really making more and more headlines. Just because it you have to ask that question. Are these tech companies bigger than governments? And I know that's like the extreme view, but we rely on them so much. So having these tech companies and government play well together in the sandbox is vital to kind of our day-to-day lives, whether you think or not. It is.
Yep.
All right.
All over my newsfeed.
Yep. So James Bond, Uncharted, Ghostbusters, Morbius, all have been delayed. Not to anyone's surprise.
James Bond, isn't that done?
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Or it's like in final edits.
Well, it's been
I thought it was
ready
like
for release
done.
since last April.
Yeah, because they were shopping it. Like they were like, "Does somebody want to buy this?"
Yeah, but apparently they were asking for an insane amount that no one was willing to pay. So
sure,
just like Godzilla versus Kong or Kong versus Zilla, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, to no one's surprise, all these movies are being delayed.
But here's the thing: all these things get delayed, yes. But look at what happened to Godzilla versus Kong. Got moved up once they've decided on something.
Yeah.
So all of this news is extremely fluid. It could be next week we report that James Bond is going to be streaming because X company paid a ludicrous amount.
But that's the thing, right? Like they leave that door open because I think that's the route that all of these movies want to take. It's just a matter of whether they can get the deals in place or not. And remember, again, we're looking at worldwide distribution, so how it gets released in the States is obviously different in Canada. It's obviously different than Europe. It's obviously different in Asia, China, where you can actually go and watch a movie for the most part. So yeah, it's these delays are opening the doors for additional negotiation.
Yeah, it creates controversy, it gets people talking, and the movies are done. That's the most important thing. When you tell me the Batman gets delayed because of production issues due to COVID-19, I go, oh crap, that's an impactful delay. When the movies are in the can and you see this news, it's just bullshit posturing to get a deal done, to get further negotiation at the table, because they go, look, it's trending on Twitter. That means people will pay. Give us more money. It's just leverage tactics to me. That's the weird thing that's developed since COVID.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right, guys. One last thing before we go, and that is MCU, and specifically our WandaVision spoiler-free review of Episode 3. Guys, what did you think of it, Tyler?
I love this show. So good.
Yeah, same here.
So good.
I really, really like it. I've talked to a couple people, and, we were talking about this before we started recording, and I think Phil put it best, because this has been how I've been explaining it, and it's a slow burn, right? The payoff is going to be there. It's the MCU. I have no doubt that there's going to be a major payoff at the end of this. And for the first time, I feel lucky being a wrestling fan, because wrestling is built on slow burns and slow storytelling. So I finally feel vindicated for being a wrestling fan all these fucking years, because I am now trained to wait for that payoff. It's
nice.
true, though. It's true.
Sure.
Slow burn.
Slow burn.
In wrestling, it's like, well, what do we do? Well, let's just do a little bit and then fight.
But you get it,
Because
like
you get
in
the
the
excitement of
80s.
the fight. Come on.
But in the 80s, you had a year-long build-up to a storyline. Like, if you take a look at Hogan versus Macho Man, from WrestleMania 4, you started planting the seeds of their match for WrestleMania 5. A fucking year. A year
yeah, but you can
build-up.
still go and watch Hulk Hogan like every week.
But it's a build-up for
somebody
the
else.
main event. That's what
fair.
I mean. Like, yeah, you see these guys often. You can see many episodes of WandaVision. But what I'm talking about is, like, for the final payoff, the payoff being wherever the fuck WandaVision is going, it's little by little, And I think this week, we got, like, a pretty big view into kind of where things are going. But, it's just, I'm really liking the show a lot. And I know that this show is not for everyone. And Phil, you were saying that, like, tell the audience about some of the things the reactions you've seen.
I know for myself, I'm in the same boat as Boris. Maybe I don't love it as much as you guys, but I'm willing to watch it because I know it's going to get good at some point. And it's not a huge eyeball drag on me. There are things that make me happy with it just by the virtue of its existence. Now, out of what I'm seeing on Twitter and out of fans that maybe aren't as involved in Marvel at all, like one of these fans came to me after I don't know how long, and he goes, "Hey, Black Panther was actually good." I was shocked as shit. He even watched Black Panther, but it was only because it got on a list of best movies for the Oscars that he decided he was going to go watch it, and he liked it, right? But he's not going to go back and watch all of the MCU or anything. He just watches that. Now he started watching WandaVision, and he comes to me this week and he says, "WandaVision, not going to bother watching it. Like, it's not doing anything for me." And I thought he might catch him on the nostalgia. I thought it might catch him on the nostalgia because he's an older person. But nope, it's not resonating at all with him. But I'm like, okay, fair. And I'm seeing that today when I'm sitting down in the morning eating my leftover pizza. That I just see a lot of people on Twitter, the love-or-hate polarizations of this show. There's definitely a viewpoint where people are frustrated with the slow burn and maybe the domestic aspect of the show, and they're waiting for something. Like I think that those people come back to the show when you have an episode that hits. Yeah. Then they might go back and watch them all.
And that's exactly it. Because one of the things I was Wanda-ing, see what I did there? Shut up, it gets us listens.
That's what y'all want? Audience?
I think that if, this show seems to be built on a binge watch, right? I think a lot of people, and just where a lot of people go to now is they're going to want to wait and they're going to binge watch the entire season. And you're going to see, Phil, that a lot of people who were iffy on it, they're going to go back, watch, and binge the entire thing. They're going to say, okay, that was good.
Yep.
I also think the other side is we're starting to see what Disney Marvel said they were going to do. Of after Infinity War, it's going to be less of you have to watch everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't say it in those words, but it's pretty obvious. Like, we're in a different sub arcs. That's what we're getting towards, and we're starting to see that. Again, it was always the way Star Wars has been, right? Of like, you're not going to watch all the shows, most of you. And I think that's what they're going towards.
It's a little bit
and there are people who are going to, and that's fine too.
It's, different.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Styles, different genres. I don't like every genre out there, so I might not necessarily, this is not my personal view, but let's talk about She-Hulk, for example, right? Everyone says that's going to be like a legal drama. That might not be the sitcom that WandaVision is trying to be, right? So all these shows are super different. If we look at Hawkeye, that's going to be an action adventure. So that's going to be your action adventure shoot 'em up that a lot of people want. Same with Falcon and Winter Soldier, right? So it's these different genres, and unless, if you have that connection with these characters, you're going to probably check it out. But I don't think people are going to like everything that the MCU gives you. And that's not to say that the MCU is going in a bad direction. It's that they're trying to capture as many people humanly possible in these shows as they can.
Well, and we already saw it happening. It was just, a lot of them had more, like, but people even said, like, what was it? Winter Soldier was like a 1970s spy thriller.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We had Winter Soldier, which was that spy thriller. We had Ant-Man, which was that
heist.
The heist movie. We started seeing it. We had the comedy in Guardians of the Galaxy. So we started seeing this. But now it's like, because it's now in short form TV or short form, we'll see where this kind of goes, right? Like in terms of
and Kevin Feige pointed out that he's going to be actively instructing people. If you want to be able to knit together the story, these are your must-watches on the TV side. Yeah. Like Disney are going to be in your face about it and say, you don't have to watch all this stuff. You can just watch these 3 things, and you're gonna be able to go into this with no problem.
Yep. Hey, so welcome to being a comic book reader since the 2000s, where it's this web of releases that may or may not come together. Tyler, what were you saying?
With the other side being there's also a much more robust ecosystem now of YouTubers and reviewers and commentators that either you can consume instead of watching the show, or who are going to tell you, like, here's what to look for. And they're going to give you those takes above and on top of Disney, which in turn gives Disney free advertising.
Yep. Hey, we did it with Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's speaking of the comics in the 2000s, thanks to these guys, I told them, hey, I got Marvel Unlimited, what should I read? And Boris throws out a little hook. Oh, Civil War. So what do I do? Civil War in Marvel Unlimited. And it goes, do you want to read the comic books called Civil War, or do you want to read the story arc called Civil War? And I'm like, I want to read the story arc. I'm a completionist. Oh my dear Lord.
So big.
My God. I'm that's like 6 issues in.
Event.
Yeah. I'm reading Fantastic Four. I'm reading Spider-Man. I'm reading like Thor. I'm like unbelievable. And then there's all the stuff that I didn't really realize, like the X-Men and all this stuff, because they don't have the limitations that Disney has on the MCU or had. So now it's a completely different dynamic as a fan of the Civil War cinematic push, where I'm like, oh my God, what's Logan going to do? And what's the Fantastic Four going to do? And what's this entity's opinion on this? And it's mind-blowing.
I mean, about that. Civil War is probably one of the best Marvel events there's ever been.
Yeah.
It's solid. And it's very post 9/11. Like, I don't know if you were like, it's very post 9/11 to go reread it. Yeah, we gave you a good list. There's some good stuff there. Oh yeah, it is very much a critique. Again, comics has never been political, but it is very much a commentary and critique on the use of skills, weaponry, and stuff in a post 9/11 situation, and the tension between government oversight and individual rights.
Crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff. These comic books. I'm telling you, these funny books. It's a testament, like, for a guy who was in it and got out of it and is going back into it. It's pretty amazing, the snapshot that I'm getting right now. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm also reading Division,
the Tom King run.
The Tom King, yeah. Just because I know we have some friends out there in the podcast world who are doing work on it and are probably going to come talk to us about WandaVision. So I thought, heck, I'm going to have to do some reading on Vision, and maybe it'll help me appreciate WandaVision a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's been weird.
It's a very
that first
weird
issue, I'm like, okay, and then it ends, and you're like, what the hell just happened?
Yep.
Okay, this is going places. Interesting.
That's how Fight Club 2 felt. And they were out around the same time. So it was a very interesting time for comics where it's like, what the fuck did I just read?
Then Fight Club 3 happened.
Yeah. Well,
what happened? Is Fight Club 3 something? Okay, that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
I mean, Fight Club 2 started good, and then just that happened.
Well, they did certain things that, like, no one should ever do in anything.
Wait, what? You think it's not good to literally write yourself into the comic about your inability to end the comic and then shit on your audience for wanting an ending to the comic?
Yes.
I am Jax Umbligata.
Dude, it's... Phil, you have no idea. Like, we used to rave about that on the first incarnation of this show. And then literally 1 week it was, so this happened, and we never talked about it again.
Like, the first 2 or 3 issues showed insane promise, and, like, we're doing these really interesting things, and then it just became, fuck you, what do you want? You don't deserve endings from me. And it was like, Chuck, your accountant stole a lot of money. You need to finish this comic.
You know, honestly, I felt like in his mind, he thinks he's David Lynch, you know? And David Lynch is known to not give people endings, especially if you look at, like, David Lynch doesn't give you endings. So,
well, no, David Lynch gives you... here's my difference, I think, because I think that David Lynch gives you an ending, but it's not the ending you want. And it's not necessarily like it's a neat ending. It's just he ends things.
Yeah.
And it's very much like, put the fucking pieces together, you idiot. Versus Chuck Palahniuk thinks he is and doesn't.
Well, the other thing about David Lynch is that he gives you so many, like, just false things in there, false flags, that it's just like, good luck trying to piece everything together. It's like Watchmen did it, you know? Like, okay, whatever happened to that bendy guy that went into the sewer in Watchmen, you know? Things like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, David Lynch gives you all the pieces, and he's like, put them together.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, guys, I think that is that. So, Phil, can you tell our listeners how they can send us their thoughts,
feedbacks?
Their muses,
their thoughts, their feedbacks? Their feedbacks. We like feedbacks. You can track us down at www.itscanonpodcast.com. You can look us up on all your favorite big media socials like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. Email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. And you could subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere you find podcasts. Audible. We're even on Audible. You're going to find the It's Canon Podcast. And thank you so much for taking the time to listen this week. We really do appreciate it. And make sure you click subscribe and leave a rate and review on any of the apps that allow you to. It's greatly appreciated.
Yep, exactly. Thank you so much, Phil. And thank you to all of our listeners for giving us, the time in your week, in your podcasting rotation to listen to us, to send feedback, to talk with us, and whatever else it is you want to do with that. I'm just going to stop that before I get carried away.
Yep.
I'm keeping you honest. I know where you were going to go.
I wasn't going there, but as I'm talking, I'm like, oh, this is not sounding good. This is not sounding good. And I can't edit this because music is playing. So, anyways, guys, yeah, there's a lot of fun things coming out in the next few weeks. So I think, some people have been asking, where are your specials? Where are your interviews? We're getting there. We're just taking a slow start back into 2021. We have a lot of stuff planned for you. We have specials coming up. We're even going to be talking about sports in some shape, way, or form and having a sports special. So in the next few weeks, we will be getting back to 2 episodes a week. But for now, hopefully everyone is enjoying our focused news episode. And then that's pretty much it. So we are the It's Canon Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things, everything. The best part of it all is that it's all in canon. He's Phil. He's Tyler. I'm Boris. Good night.